Hi, everyone. We'll be ready to get started with our webinar in just a couple of minutes. Hi, everyone, of our 2016 House Capital One for sponsoring NH or mistakes, however, are on our website, www.nhrecordwebinar. Second, please note that all participant lines are muted in order to get through the question box. If that doesn't work, please visit the go-to-webtricksonline.com. Our housing landscape is an annual snapshot of housing affordability issues working households. Area median income. In 2014, there were 46.1 million households in the United States that report analyzes of 11c.org. Also, in the research tools area of our site, you can access our housing landscape portal, which includes interactive and affordability data for the 50 largest. Difficulty here. Bear with me just one moment, please. Working renters, households with a severe housing cost burden, are those whose house is facing in the wrong direction. From 2011 to 2014, the median income for working renters increased by a little more than 9%, but the median housing cost also rose by 6.3%. By contrast, working renters saw large urban areas and small rural communities. In many metro areas, rents are climbing at much higher rates than incomes for working households. This housing costs for the two groups shrank from 170 for work chart. We can see that while the number of working renters increased by 7%, number of work rates among working households. Some of this decline is attributable to lingering effects from the foreclosure crisis, but another factor is the difficulty that many working renter households face in saving up enough money for a down payment and qualifying for a mortgage to purchase a home. Of course, the end effect of the increase in working renter households is a steady rise in demand for rental housing, which in turn pushes rents to higher and higher levels. When we break down working households by race or ethnicity, we can see that households headed by non-white earners are more likely to be paying more than 50% of their income for housing costs. The exception to this is for American Indian or Alaskan Native households, many of whom live on reservation land, where much of the housing stock is comparatively less expensive, but also in many cases of substandard quality. The highest rate of severe housing cost burden among working households is for Asian or Pacific Islanders. This group also has the highest median household income among working households, but many working Asian households live in areas where housing costs are quite high. For example, almost 30% of working Asian households live in California, where the rate of severe housing cost burden for working households is more than 30%. This chart shows rates of severe housing cost burden for working households by income level. In 2014, nearly 4 out of 5 households earning less than 30% of the median income for their area were spending more than half their total income on housing costs. Many workers at the lower end of the income spectrum are adults in minimum wage jobs. For perspective, a full-time worker earning the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour would gross about $15,000 a year, assuming she worked all 52 weeks. If that worker were supporting only herself, that $15,000 income would classify her as extremely low income, that is below 30% of area median income in 75 of 349 U.S. metros. If, however, she were supporting a household of 4 people, that income would classify her as extremely low income in 321 out of 349 U.S. metros. Federal housing assistance can help households at extremely low and very low income levels by capping their rent payments at 30% of actual household income. However, as it stands now, only about a quarter of eligible households are receiving this kind of rental assistance. This is our map that shows housing cost burden by state and by metro, and this is essentially the map that's interactive on our website. But what this particular graphic shows is that most households, our low costs tend to be very high. However, some states with rates of severe housing cost burden that are lower than the national rate in Texas as a whole, New Orleans, the colors aren't showing well on my screen. Hopefully they're showing better on yours. And also Memphis in 2011 and 2014. Addressing the high demand for affordable rental options by increasing the stock of affordable housing. Tax credits offer an incentive to developers to build affordable housing. Land use rules can provide further costs associated with creating and preserving affordable rental housing, especially in areas where affordable options are limited. In addition to the U.S. Department of Housing and the HUD Veterans of Veterans, HUD also, because data alone at the like poor quality schools and lack of access to transportation. So you have areas that may look very affordable if you're just looking at rent data, but if you look more closely, some of these areas lack obligation, racially concentrated areas of poverty, housing production resources. It is not necessarily the right private substitution to affordable rental housing. Okay, if there are any questions, I'm happy to. Excuse me, just one moment, please. Do formulas that we use to get things like area median income, and there are HUD guidelines for that, and how we arrive at populations for certain metro areas. Page, which is also accessible through the landscape portal on. Okay, I have a question. How much do you attribute decreasing monthly housing costs for owners to the recent and historically low mortgage market? Conversely, how much is the increase in monthly renter costs associated with units driving up prices? That's a really good question. Of the decreasing monthly house to some of the low mortgage renter costs is, which does put upward pressure on units. Question: there's a 5, but I believe that's pretty much the case nationwide, that there are long wait lists at housing authorities for housing assistance. Okay, is the data you cited available and standard tables available through the American Fact Finder website? Some of it is. Some of the you can certainly use the American Fact through American Fact Finder. Again, our methodology page shows how we calculate the report housing 30% nationwide for its housing vouchers to pay for their housing cost burden. Anything more than 50, that's up a little bit. Do the units remain in the previous income band, very low, low, et cetera? I don't think that it's guaranteed one-for-one replacement. I don't think. I could be wrong about that. I believe that the units do remain in the previous income band. There is a certain amount of displacement, and particularly policies. There really isn't a one-size-fits-all affected as severely cost-burdened. What is that attributable to? Presentation, and we talk. So they also have higher median incomes. This presentation will be on our website. It usually no residents can be displaced in RAD. So as opposed to the 30%, not sure what clarification on what you mean by residual income. I'm not sure what that term means. Has there been any analysis on a yearly basis? Money left there. To my knowledge, we're still only using. Okay, I believe that concludes questions. I thank you all so much for attending our webinar, and I thank you for your thoughtful questions. Thanks again.